Welcome to the IDP Plus Touchdown Props Podcast, where if you're looking for touchdown prop bets for Week 12 of the NFL season, you've come to the right place. Stick around, I'll be digging into my favorite anytime touchdown prop bets for Week 12 of the NFL season. Welcome back to Week 12 of the IDP Plus Anytime Touchdown Props podcast, where each week I've been laying out a buffet of sorts, if you will, of players that I like with particularly good matchups, good streaks, guys who I think are going to find the end zone in each week. So we'll go ahead and jump into it. I'll start out with my one running back that I have this week laid out here. I've got Brian Robinson coming in with an anytime touchdown at, let's see, where is he? Not on my banners list, but that's okay. He's coming in at minus 145. He plays Dallas, the Cowboys at home. Finally, we get Brian Robinson back for touchdowns. I know I've put him in here a couple of times and he just hasn't played, but we finally get him back. Daniels has been gun shy on rushing, so I expect Brian Robinson to be used more, especially to help get Daniels a little bit more comfortable with his legs again. So I think that they have been sorely missing Brian Robinson, and the fact that he's going to be coming back this week, no less, in a great matchup against Dallas. And there's only been 2 games so far this year where he's played that he hasn't scored a touchdown. So Washington just really loves to use him in close to the goal line. And if anything, I think this game can get out of hand early, and Washington just can opt to run the ball as much as possible against a vulnerable Dallas rushing defense that has allowed the third most rushing touchdowns to running backs in the last 4 weeks, and also the third most yards. So I like Brian Robinson. He's kind of got the perfect game to come back and really just hit the ground running, and that ought to be a good game script for him to get plenty of usage in this game against Dallas. So he ought to pick up right where he left off pre-injury. Next, that was my only running back. I can say that I know Aaron Jones has a great matchup this week. He hasn't really been too particularly great in terms of scoring touchdowns so far this season, but he's historically each season he's always has at least one huge boom game, and he's due any time now. Any one of these great matchups that he plays, he could just absolutely go off, and he does have a great matchup this week. So I've got a little bit of money on some props on him, but I didn't feel comfortable enough to put him in here until I can see him establish some sort of consistent usage in the red zone. So we'll go ahead and jump into wide receivers. I've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, who came in when I checked last at minus 155 for an anytime touchdown. He plays the Indianapolis Colts this week. He has a touchdown in 8 straight games, and the Detroit offense is pretty well unstoppable. The ground game can't be touched, and when they're rolling, everything else opens up. And Amon-Ra is Jared Goff's favorite target. He's a good safety valve, his favorite touchdown target, and like I said, literally everybody gets to eat in this offense. So Amon-Ra is among the first to score behind the running backs. So again, I'll kind of I'll throw the running backs out there as they're always good plays. They just didn't have really great odds, or I would have put them in here as well. But we'll cash on Amon-Ra while we can before he gets crazy as well. He's already kind of pushing that at minus 155, so we'll take it while we can. Next on my list here, I've got Zay Flowers. When I checked last, he was looking at plus 145 for an anytime touchdown. He plays the Chargers this week. And I know what you're thinking. Chargers have been great against wide receivers so far this year, but I think this actually could be a sneaky play. The last 4 weeks, the Chargers have actually allowed more wide receiver touchdowns than any other defense that's playing in Week 12. That's 6 touchdowns in the last 3 weeks. They've allowed 3 to Higgins and Chase, 2 to Calvin Ridley, and 1 to Cedric Tillman a few weeks ago. So that's just all in the last 3 weeks. So I like Zay Flowers to get a good opportunity in the red zone, or maybe even to break some coverage in this one, because the Chargers are great at defending tight ends, and that is where the pass game thrives through with Baltimore, is through the tight end. So if you eliminate the tight ends and Derrick Henry is just doing his thing, when Lamar Jackson is looking to pass the ball, he's going to be looking more to Zay Flowers because that's where you can exploit this defense. So I like the over/under as well in this game. It sits at 50, which means there's going to be lots of scoring, and Flowers has been among the touchdown favorites as of late. He's actually scored 3 in the last 3 weeks, and those are against some tough secondaries. So after a rough loss last week, I think this is a great get-right game for Baltimore. There should be a lot of scoring, so I like that, especially with some plus juice. Next here, I had Devonta Smith, but it looks like he's not playing this week. So we're going to go A.J. Brown for an anytime touchdown. I think he was looking at plus 130 for odds, and he goes up against the L.A. Rams. The Rams have allowed the 5 wide receiver touchdowns in the last 4 weeks. That's second most among defenses playing in week 12, and also top 5 in yards allowed to opposing wide receivers. So considering Devonta Smith is a no-go this week, I like A.J. Brown should get some extra looks, and I think that this would be a good game for him to finally get back in the touchdown column, because I know he's been kind of dry the last number of weeks. So I think this is a great opportunity for him to get right, maybe get a big touchdown. Again, this over/under sits at 49. So like I mentioned with the last one, high over/under means Vegas expects a lot of points to be scored. And I just hope Barkley and Hurts don't snipe all the touchdowns. That would be the only caveat with this play. So the Eagles will likely look to exploit the Rams' pass defense early and try to get out ahead. But the Rams are historically gonna stay in this game. So there should be a back and forth affair. I expect a lot of passing in this game as the Rams are more vulnerable through the air. So I like that play for A.J. Brown with some plus money. This next one here, I'm going to jump into the Chargers receivers. I'm just going to throw out Ladd McConkey and Quentin Johnston because think about it this way. Ladd McConkey comes in at plus 130 for an anytime touchdown. Quentin Johnston comes in at plus 200. At least one of these two guys has scored in each of the last 5 weeks. If you were to have placed one unit on either one of these guys, or on both of them, each of the last 5 weeks, you still would have profited money at these odds. Every week, you still would have made money. So that's kind of where I'm looking at. I even put some on both of them myself this week because, again, these are the 2 leading touchdown scores for the Chargers playing against Baltimore. The over/under sits at 50. Lots of scoring. Quentin Johnston actually even has a touchdown each of the last 3 weeks. And you imagine Baltimore would be looking to limit his big play upside. So that's where I would kind of lean McConkey. Maybe he hasn't scored in the last few weeks. Maybe he did score last week. He hasn't scored quite as often as QJ. But maybe that's kind of where they go back and let up on McConkey, and he can take advantage. Either way, I think one of these guys could score against a very, very vulnerable Baltimore secondary who has given up the most yards to opposing wide receivers and our top 5 play for touchdown scores in that respect as well. So I like this play for actually. I like I said earlier, I even put a little on both of these guys because if just one of them hits, you're still making money. So I like those plays. And this is kind of another situation where as I go into my next play here, it's the same kind of thing where Calvin Ridley comes in. It's the Tennessee pass catcher. So Calvin Ridley's odds for an anytime touchdown are plus 220, and Nick Westbrook-Ikhine is plus 350. Again, if you place $10 on both of these guys, you're still profiting twice your cash at least on if just one of them hits. So I like both these plays this week. I mean, again, if they both hit, whew, man, you're golden. But if at least one of them hits, you're still profitable. So they go up against a Houston secondary that's allowed top 5 yardage and top 5 touchdowns in each of the last 4 weeks among defenses that are playing in week 12. So those are stats allowed to opposing wide receivers. And at these prices, like I said, if one hits, you still double your money if you place a bet on both. And the Houston secondary is super exploitable. And Calvin Ridley had 2 touchdowns week 10, and Nick Westbrook-Ikhine has 1 in 5 of the last 6 games. So Westbrook just sees quite a bit less targets, but those have been pretty valuable targets that he's gotten. So again, I like both these guys this week against a vulnerable Houston secondary. Oh, before I continue, I will just read you guys a little bit about one of our sponsors, Expedia specifically. If you're planning your next road trip to catch the big game, whether you need a flight, a hotel, or a rental car, Expedia has you covered. Save big and travel like a pro by booking through idpplus.com/Expedia. Secure the best travel deals and make the most of your football road trips. We'll jump into my next play now, which is looking at Travis Kelce and or Noah Gray. I'm not going to go advocate for both of these guys. I only put Noah Gray in here because he's plus 400 and he scored 2 last week, but those were his first touchdowns. So great matchup, but, take that with a grain of salt. I think Travis Kelce gets the first chance to take advantage of a good matchup. They play Carolina, who's in full tank form, and they've allowed the third most tight end touchdowns of teams playing in week 12. So I think Kansas City tight ends should continue to eat. And again, Kelce should be the priority, but like say last week, Gray got 2. But generally, I don't see Gray scoring 2 weeks in a row, but who knows? Great matchup. My next play here is going to be Jonnu Smith. Looking at his matchup, comes in at plus 180 against the New England Patriots. He's seen at least 6 or more targets in 5 of the last 6 games, and he has 3 touchdowns in that time. So he's cashed on an advantageous matchup in last week with 2 touchdowns, and I think he could very well cash this week as he's been very consistent for Miami, especially with Tua coming back, and the wide receivers have just kind of been up and down, but Jonnu Smith has been that one consistent pillar for Tua. So I like this play, especially at plus 180. And the Patriots have allowed 3 tight end touchdowns in the last 4 weeks, and generally speaking, wide receivers also take advantage of this defense. So Tyreek was still at plus money at plus 105 too, but I wanted to put Jonnu Smith in here with some extra juice. That'll be it for tight ends. We're going to look into a quarterback here. Jaden Daniels particularly comes in with an anytime touchdown odds at plus 130. He plays Dallas at home this week, and I just kind of mentioned earlier they get B-Rob back, so Daniels can kind of feel a little bit more comfortable in the pocket, and he doesn't have to have so much pressure on him to use his legs because it seems like he's playing injured. So that would be kind of the only caveat here is if he's not healthy. But he's had plenty of time to get healthy, and now he's got Brian Robinson to kind of take some of that heat off. So I think otherwise this is a great matchup. Dallas has allowed the top 2 is top 2 in rushing touchdowns allowed to quarterbacks and top 3 in rushing yards allowed to quarterbacks in the last 4 games of all teams playing this week. So it's a great matchup for Daniels to get his legs working efficiently again. And like I said, Brian Robinson's back, so I think Daniels is not going to have the pressure. So this ought to be worth a sprinkle at the very least with a great matchup with a little bit of a butt. So that's going to actually wrap things up. I'll just kind of throw out a few other guys here for honorable mentions. I wanted to put Anthony Richardson out there. He scored 2 touchdowns on the ground last week. He's at plus 150 playing Detroit. He ought to be running for his life, so he might get in the end zone. It's not a great matchup, so I'll throw that out there as well. Mike Evans is plus 155 against New York. It's not a great matchup, but Mike Evans is back. Baker Mayfield doesn't have Chris Godwin. He's going to be looking at Mike Evans early and often, and they're going to want to make a statement. I think broken coverage could very well happen, and Mike Evans with extra plus juice, we love that. So next on the honorable mentions list, I've got DJ Moore plus 225 against Minnesota. Minnesota is very vulnerable in the secondary, and this is in the second week with a new offensive coordinator. So this is more of just like a hopeful play where maybe with now that the team has 2 weeks under a new coach, maybe they have a little more chemistry, a little more understanding of kind of how he wants things done. So I'm hoping maybe that early season connection can come back and we can cash on some plus 225 odds for DJ Moore's touchdown. And that's going to wrap things up. I did put Aaron Jones. I mentioned him earlier. He's at plus 115, or was last I checked against Chicago. He's very exploitable in terms of rushing defense. Aaron Jones ought to be used plenty in this game, so he might be able to punch one in for us. But that's actually going to wrap up the show, everybody. So that's my Week 12 parlay buffet, if you will. So thanks, everyone, for watching. You can reach out to me on Twitter at AxmanIDP. Leave me a comment, like, subscribe. Check out all the great stuff at idpplus.com and our various YouTube pages. So again, let's bet responsibly, stay within our means, and let's have a little fun and a little luck this week. So everybody have a good weekend, and we'll see you back next week.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.